these licenses, they made some business decisions. They had an existing store on Colfax, which they closed, and they moved their inventory and some of their sales personnel over to the Wheat Ridge site because of that. Now, when we became aware of the error, we contacted the business owner, and we started trying to figure out what to do to correct the situation. I would point out that the applicant's been very cooperative. The city has waived fees. We did not require any additional ODP documentation. The city attorney agreed to how I was going to process this, and what we'll do is, if this is approved, we'll do an affidavit of amendment, which will get recorded at the county against the property. Okay, the outline development plan, again, approved in 1980. Under the old system, approved the allowable uses and development standards for the property. And in this situation, the existing site is fully in compliance with all the setbacks, all the lot coverage, all the landscaping. They're totally in compliance. It is just those two additional uses that are out of compliance. But because we're adding uses in, we do have to process it as a rezoning, and so therefore staff has to go through an analysis of the evaluation criteria. We have concluded that there have been changes to the western portion of the city which have impacted the subject property. I think we're all aware of the 178-acre annexation that occurred on the other side of I-70 to accommodate a Cabela's store. At some point, we anticipate about 800,000 square feet of retail commercial uses in that area, and while the building is currently not under construction, there have been a lot of the infrastructure improvements associated to support the development of that western area, and that includes the widening and the improvement to Youngfield Street, the construction of the West 40th Avenue I-70 underpass from Youngfield that you saw a picture of, and a relocation of a portion of Clear Creek. The other improvements that have occurred include investment by CDOT in the new interchange movements between I-70 and Highway 58. More recently, we approved 3 additional annexation, which included property directly to the west of the Cabela's site owned by Coors, and then another one that was, the applicant was Longs Peak Metropolitan District. There will be additional commercial development on the Coors piece, and that combined with the Longs Peak Metro District gives us all the infrastructure right-of-way to accommodate all those improvements for Cabela's, including the new interchange and the connection with 44th Avenue and so on. Let's see what else. Abutting the property on the north and south are properties that are within the same planned development district with uses of RV sales and office warehouse. The Youngfield Street has recently been widened, which will accommodate any additional traffic and turning movements from more RVs. And we have concluded that the additional uses of RV sales and rental would be compatible with those existing uses adjacent. It would also allow for what Ryan Stachelski, our economic development specialist, terms clustering, where you group like businesses, allowing the shopper to go from place to place and do some comparison shopping. We have concluded that there will be economic benefits as a result of the amendment. Camping World will be fully legitimized as a full-service RV center, which will allow them to do everything from selling the vehicle to selling the accessories to the installation and servicing. And we also believe there might be spin-off benefits from folks coming to shop there to buy their RVs maybe in the adjacent commercial areas. All of the infrastructure is currently in place. Again, Youngfield Street was recently widened to accommodate turning movements from those large vehicles. The one area of concern that I had from a staff perspective was that of parking. Again, no physical changes are proposed for the property, therefore there should be no impact. But like I say, what happened if they brought all this display onto the site and displaced the customer parking? Well, they currently have about 161 spaces, and I did a fairly detailed breakdown in the staff report looking at the number of employees, the number of bays, the amount of retail space, and so on. And based on that analysis in the staff report, I have concluded that there is adequate parking on site to accommodate the new usage. The other thing I struggled with a little bit was trying to figure out how we regulate this thing. Do we throw out a number and say, oh, you can't have more than 50? And as you're probably aware, RVs vary greatly in size. They can be 24 feet, they can be 70 feet long. So rather than dictate a number, what I've done instead is gone ahead and designated some, no, not 70 feet? 60 feet?
Like 45.
45? Someone told me 70 feet. That was Mark Westberg. Anyway, they can get pretty long, and so rather than trying to regulate a specific size, we just thought we would designate areas on the property that would be allowed for display and allow them to monitor them themselves. So what we're looking at is display directly along the frontage in these two locations, some in the middle, and then I included some at the back as well. I was trying to be cognizant of that existing loading dock and not encroaching into that space. The other thing that I think helps the site is many of the drive aisles that are surrounding the building in particular are oversized, which again help with the turning movements of the large vehicles. We did have a neighborhood meeting for this proposal on April 9th. Rod is the manager of KNC RV. We're the only people in attendance. And we went through a full referral to the affected agencies, primarily the fire district, the police department, public works, and so on. Based on the conclusions I drew regarding the evaluation criteria, we are supporting this application with 3 conditions. The first one is that sales and rental of other types of vehicles not be allowed. It'd be strictly RV sales. That the RV sales and rental inventory be consistent with staff's Exhibit 6, which was where I showed the display. And then finally, that all fire lanes be kept free of obstruction. And with that does conclude the staff comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Does anybody have any questions for the staff at this time? Yes. John?
Okay, so have I understood this correctly, that the applicant is actually already carrying out sales and rental on the site?
They are based on the fact that we issued licenses in error.
Okay. So first of all, I just want to say I've got no problem with the application, but I do have a problem with what has happened to bring us to this point. So, first of all, I want to know who's responsible for the oversight that allowed the first piece to take place without coming to planning.
Okay. Well, the first application came in as a rental license application. And a lot of times what we see in this type of industry where there's vehicle sales, say for example with auto dealerships, they also will have a rental component, because if your car breaks down, a lot of times you will need to rent a car. So I actually was the first one who approved the rental application based that it be ancillary to the repair. A second license came in for the sales, and it was approved by someone else in the department.
Okay, but it was approved by your department?
Yes, it was.
Okay. So if I could continue then. So what I'd like to know is what sort of procedures you've put in place as a department so that this sort of thing doesn't happen again.
And
I mean, it puts us in an awkward position of having to approve something that's already occurring.
Right.
So I'd like to know what you're going to do to keep this from happening again.
Well, believe me, we have had a lot of discussion on that standpoint. I think generally we do a pretty good job at this, but you have to realize that we've got probably hundreds of planned developments, all different uses. We've even got straight zone property that have one use. So sometimes it is difficult. Sometimes we do have things slip through the cracks. Typically, if there's a question, the sales tax license, which goes to our administrative assistant who does the research on the existing zoning conditions, a lot of times comes to me. And she'll say, I've got this license, it's in this plan development, what do you think of this use? It's hard with plan developments because you're at a situation where you're trying to come up with every conceivable use that could possibly occur on a property, and there is a lot of interpretation involved with that. This was a mistake.
John, let me just respond to that as well, because we have made some procedural changes.
Right.
The sales tax licenses are processed through our finance department as their first point of contact, and then they're distributed to other affected agency, notably community development. We review both on a planning and a building level. We've handled it to some extent historically through the administrative assistant position, and the change that we've made since this happened is that two things. We're now tracking the permits that come up, or the sales tax license that come up through our computer software, ADG, which is the same software that we use for building permits. And as a standard protocol now, different than in the past, we're referring those sales tax licenses that come up separately to a planner and to our building inspector, because they often need to be reviewed for building code compliance as well, to make sure the building is suitable for the occupancy if it, for instance, is a change in occupancy. So we hope those two things will help us do a better job of monitoring. So.
Okay.
Anyone else have questions for staff?
Yeah, I've got just some general questions. What's the spacing required of vehicle dealers?
In straight zone district, and this has come up too, in straight zone districts such as C1, not only do vehicle sales lots require a special use permit, but they also require a separation of 1,500 feet. Because this is a planned development, you typically don't issue an SUP, you deal with the underlying zoning. And that's why I say we involved Jerry Dahl in the decision, because we had a couple different routes we could have taken. His conclusion is that you don't process an SUP, you go back in and you modify the underlying zoning.
Yeah, just something to kind of keep tucked away in the back of my mind is it seems like auto sales now take place in auto parks where there are auto dealerships all located right next to each other, and it seems that 1,500-foot separation is kind of outdated with the way commerce is actually done. And my final question is, what exactly is an RV? Because there's a business at Tabor and Interstate 70 that I consider them to sell RVs, but are those technically RVs? And does RVs include fifth wheel setups?
It can. We've got a couple RV dealerships along that 44th Avenue frontage, one right at Tabor, and then another one further to the west, right almost at Youngfield. Those are actually owned by the same owner, RV America. And we've got a definition in the zoning code. I didn't include it in my staff report, but there's a wide variety of vehicles that are considered RVs. They can be self-propelled. They can be a pull-behind kind of situation, or like a camper mount. So there's a wide variety.
Okay.
The other thing about RVs is they're like a car sales. Typically, the sales tax revenue goes to the location of where the person who bought it lives. We do collect direct sales tax off all the accessories that are sold, and then also the service and parts.
Anyone else?
We're being asked to approve an amendment to the PUD, and then that's going to be recorded at the county level, correct? What is going to be recorded? What is the document that's being recorded?
Well, part of the situation for staff is we were trying to facilitate the applicant as much as possible. So we could have made them come in with big sets of drawings, but instead, because it's just the one change, there are no site modifications. We're filing what's called an affidavit of amendment, which is recorded against the original plan development for this lot only. So what it is it's a piece of paper with some legalese on it. It's signed by Ken, by the business owner, the property owner, the mayor with the city clerk attestation, and then recorded against the property.
Well, shouldn't we see that document if we're acting on it?
Probably not. I think that's more of a staff function.
Okay.
Jerry, like I say, Jerry Dahl has been included in the decision-making process, and he is comfortable with that.
Because what we're recommending approval the suggested motion has some conditions, and I would think that those conditions should be in this
They will be
document.
included.
And if, okay.
Other questions for staff?
I just have a general comment that it seems to me like adding a couple of uses on this is a perfect application for the streamlined staff approval of, particularly in a situation like this where right next door is a part of the existing business.
Right, and actually, the property to the north, which is strictly RV sales, we had to process an ODP Amendment 2 to allow that use. Granting of the use on this lot will not apply to that lot to the south, the office warehouse. And so we have to be very careful how we advertise things with the legal description and so on.
More questions? Okay. I just have a question. As I understand what you're saying here, we have to conclude that of 4 out of 5 issues, of the items A through E on this, we have to conclude that 4 of them are valid, and I can do that. But I find it of interest that staff concludes that it's not in compliance with the comprehensive plan to be going this route, and I'd be interested in trying to understand why, where that fits in the context of where we'd like to go in general, realizing that there's something of an accident in place here. But we're openly admitting we're not going the route of the comp plan, and I'm curious if you'd care to have
Well,
anything
if you're familiar at all with the existing comprehensive plan, it's got some limitations as far as applicability, recognizing more of the existing condition versus any sort of forward-looking
Right.
scenario. I deliberated on this one, too, because, I mean, technically, you've already got the sales use directly to the north, which was approved in conflict with the comprehensive plan. So, the precedent was set, and
Would you, I guess the point is, other than picking at you, I suppose, the point, what I was curious about is whether your feeling is whether our approach to comprehensive plan, whether this is something that we would be looking, these types of uses are what we're seeing as progressive and forward-looking for our retail.
point taken. The other thing to remember is the future land use map is only one component of the comprehensive plans. There's several, other goals, and maybe I should elaborate when we do the city council report about increased flexibility and economic tax base and that kind of thing. The future land use map is just one piece of it.
Just a side comment, I think I'm only required to agree with the other 4 anyway, so. Any more questions for staff? Would the applicant like to make a presentation, or do you have anything you'd like to say?
Find the presentation, I think the mayor has made is pretty adequate. Again, the one thing that we did do.
Or if you're gonna speak, you probably have to come up and give us your name. I'm sorry, but this is the process. Give us your name, and apparently I'm supposed to ask you to swear to tell the truth, which somehow I didn't remember I was supposed to do. So your name and spell it out.
Rod
please, for the
Anderson.
record. Okay. And last name spell?
ANDERSCN.
Okay. Thank you.
And yes, I will tell the truth. No, the only thing that, in moving to this location, as Meredith said, we did close an existing business upon approval of the licensing, which obviously created some hardships for, number one, the business, if we can't be in this location. Number two, we did pay out quite a bit of severance to existing employees as we went down from a staff of almost 40 people down to a staff of about 5 or 6. So, like I say, that was based on the licensing. So,
Thank you, and we enjoy your business in Wheat Ridge.
thank you.
With that, I guess we'll close the public hearing, and I guess we're open for discussion or amendments, or motions. Any discussion?
I'm going to move for approval, but The purpose of my questions was whether I was going to support the sale and rental of other types of vehicles not being allowed as a part of that motion. And based on the testimony, I don't see a purpose in limiting it to the RV sales. So I move to recommend approval of case number WZ09-04, a request for approval of an amendment to the Youngfield Plaza ODP for Lot 2 to allow the additional uses of RV sales and rental on property located at 4100 Youngfield for the following reasons. There is adequate parking on site to accommodate the new uses. It will legitimize the RV sales and rental occurring on the property. And finally, the evaluation criteria support approval of the request with the following conditions. RV sales and rental property be located as specified on staff's Exhibit 6, and all required fire lanes be kept clear of obstruction.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Any discussion?
I'd like to discuss it. What are the pros and cons from the staff on allowing other vehicles to be sold?
Well, for one thing, that's not how it was advertised. If we would move forward with that, I would have to rethink how we proceed to first reading with that. And like I say, the way we advertised, I believe, was for sales in RV rental only. So I would probably make a modification at first reading if that is something Planning Commission supports. Ken, do you have any comment about opening it up to other? The property owner, the underlying property owner, who's actually the Kuntz family, who owns property directly to the south, was supportive of the RV sales and rental. So I would totally have to go back and probably talk with them and get their concurrence. If I had my druthers, I would like to see it limited to the RV sales and storage, or rental, excuse me.
Meredith, is that a convenience issue or a philosophical issue? Or
Both.
Would it be appropriate to amend the motion to include that then, if the applicant has no objection to it?
I'm a little unclear. Procedurally, can he amend his own motion? Can somebody help me?
Well, he could strike the condition.
Isn't he adding a condition? He's re-adding your condition back in, is he not?
Oh, is that what I'm sorry, so you're okay adding it back in? Then I think a substitute motion, or withdraw the second and it'll die, and then we'll get a substitute motion.
Or can one of us amend his motion?
Yes.
Would anyone care to amend?
Can I make a friendly amendment? I'd like to add the following condition: the sales and rental of other types of vehicles will not be allowed on the subject property.
Do I have a?
I'll second that.
So, do we have to vote on the amendment then, or do we have to vote on
If
the
it's a friendly amendment and Dick accepts it, no.
So you're accepting the amendment, so we can vote on the underlying motion then?
Yes.
All right.
Provided the seconder also accepts the amendment.
Who was this?
Henry?
Henry.
Henry, are you willing to accept the amendment?
Yeah.
So we can vote.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. That, I guess now we have the study session on mixed-use development, and is there a staff report for that one? Yep. Is that?
Jeff Hurt.
Oh, good, we like to torture him. I think we did a good job with Meredith tonight.